Hey everyone, this is Nick, and we might be the last generation to be able to enjoy a nice, open, unified, worldwide internet. Because with the centralization that big tech companies operate on their various services and the lockdown they impose on their users, plus the various measures that countries take to determine what their citizens can or can't access online, it's undeniable that the open interoperable web is dying. So let's see why, let's see a few signs that the internet is actually kinda healing in certain ways, and also let's see this segue to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by TuxCare, and once again they're giving you some pretty cool information for free. Using the link in the description you can download their latest white paper, which is going to help you decide whether the CARTA approach to security can work for you. CARTA stands for Continuous Adaptive Risk and Trust Assessment, and it's a model built by Gartner based on monitoring, automation, using technologies from multiple vendors, and that lets you respond quickly to various security vulnerabilities and threats. With the free report, you'll know how to use this model to secure your operations, you'll know the various challenges that you'll face, and how you can integrate live patching in support of this model. So head over to the link in the description, learn more about CARTA, and start securing your operations now. So the first big thing that is killing the open web is the centralization of all services, all user data, and the lockdown that big tech companies impose on their users. Big tech companies like Apple, Google, or Microsoft are making all efforts possible to ensure that their users stick to their online services and products. And this ends up dictating what parts of the internet they end up accessing or not. Using a specific web browser means you're using a specific web browser engine, which dictates what you can or cannot do online. Safari on iOS doesn't support all modern features of web apps. Google Chrome and their Blink engine limits what ad blocking or tracker blocking capabilities you can have. They are restricting your open internet experience. But it's not just browsers, it's also the phones or the phone OS that they make, which have their own limited app stores that dictate what you can or can't install or do on your own device. But hey, it's not like your smartphone is going to become your main way of accessing the internet, right? That mobile internet fad, it's never gonna catch on. Now it's also the search engines from these companies that will dictate which websites surface and which don't. Whether you're using Google or Bing or Yandex or Baidu, every single one of these engines will prioritize certain websites and content over others, often making their own services first and foremost. Now the algorithms from the platform you use, like YouTube for video, Facebook or Twitter, will define what content you see and what content you don't, and thus limit your internet experience as well. It is really easy to fall into a comfortable bubble of services offered by one single company. For example, if you only use Google services, you basically only view Google's vision of the internet. And that vision is not the full open web. What it lets you see first, or what it lets you see at all, is dictated by their advertisers, not by what you should see or what you actually want to see. Now, even worse, some people basically only access the internet through one application, Facebook, Twitter, or a chat app like WeChat. It's their entire portal to do anything that they will read, play, write, or do. This everything app vision is insanely scary and stupid, and it's something I will discuss in another video. And then you have the lack of interoperability, like being unable to talk to people on Twitter if you only have a Facebook account, or iMessage not working with regular normal SMS or RCS, limiting the features and the way you can talk to people, or just the data being unusable in another service even if you export it from your current service. And some of you might think, well, of course Twitter isn't interoperable by Facebook, they're not made by the same company. But that's not how the internet used to work or how the internet was built. Chat apps, for example, used to almost all rely on a single protocol, and they could all talk to each other, whatever the client you were using. So, suffices to say that the bigger a company gets, the more it's going to restrict what it's gonna show you of the internet. It won't prevent you from accessing everything, but you still won't do it because it's going to be way easier to just click and access what the company wants you to see. But this stuff you can still bypass yourself. It's not that hard to replace most Google services with something else. I did it. The only thing I use nowadays is YouTube, and I didn't have to rip off my own arms to do it. More concerning is what countries do to limit what you can and cannot access. Since people use the internet to exchange data between each other or with other countries, they also use the internet to bypass certain limitations that countries try to impose on information. And so these countries implement various filters that are basically censorship. Some of it is totally acceptable, like blocking access to illegal material, like child pornography or terrorist content. And some of it is more questionable, like blocking websites that reference various copyrighted materials, like torrent sites. The torrent file itself, sure, might be illegal, but the site that lets you access the torrent hasn't done anything wrong. It would be like blocking Wikipedia because they have the chemical formula of an explosive. Sure, you could use it to do something illegal, but the website didn't sell you any TNT. So, countries order various companies to remove content or to block their user access to stuff, like India ordering the removal of a lot of Chinese apps from various app stores, or asking ISPs to block various IP addresses, including the website for VLC, because they could not understand the difference between VLC, the official application, and people distributing infected copies of VLC illegally. Sure, let's block the only safe way to download VLC without malware. You also have Russia ordering companies like Google or Microsoft to remove certain links and websites from their search results, so no one in Russia can access them anymore. This is limiting access to the free and open web. It's killing the open internet. You don't get the full connected web, you get a subset of it. Companies who refuse can be banned in these countries, so they generally comply if they want to stay in business there. But that is not enough. Banning Google entirely from your country because they would have refused to censor some stuff is not super easy if you're not as big as China or Russia, for example. And think of what you're depriving your citizens of. Like, where are your children going to get all that spyware? But it's not just authoritarian governments that do it. In the EU, for example, France has blocked various media websites and TV channels linked to Russia after the war in Ukraine. France also at some point had a law that would ban a user from even having an internet connection if they were caught downloading pirated content 3 times in a row. Fortunately, they never really applied that rule, but it still let them implement a mass surveillance network. Cool. Now, as I said, these techniques are also used to block child pornography or terrorist-related content and other generally unacceptable media. But it's not just that gets censored, and once the capability is built, it's easy to abuse it, to remove stuff that the government might not like. And all these filters are basically killing the open, interconnected internet, because your government decides to restrict what you can or cannot access online. It's not what the internet has been designed to be. Now, when filters aren't enough, countries now implement full internet blackouts, generally to deal with protests against the government's actions. In 2020, 268 million people had their internet access shut down. That's 49% more than in 2019. India, for example, did it in Kashmir for almost a full year. And as we all know, people never rebelled before the internet was invented. Like, there were no revolutions in any country whatsoever before Sir Tim Berners-Lee implemented the internet and its Marxist idea of exchanging information. While these blackouts are selective and can still let governments access the internet themselves while the general public can't, they're devastating for a country's economy and business, and they cannot be maintained for very long periods of time. So they're generally only used by totalitarian regimes that want to either shut down any contestation or to hide their crimes. Now, these blackouts are obviously against the open internet and open communication, and they're kinda killing the web very literally in the countries where they're implemented. But the ultimate candidate against the open web is what China has built themselves. They might be linked to the general internet everybody else enjoys, but it's a one-way street. people can access their websites, but the Chinese people can't access a lot of the rest of the internet, being limited to what the Chinese government allows. China has built their own entire alternative internet with their own services and their own websites, and it's not for nothing that people are talking about the Great Firewall of China, because when you're in there, you cannot access anything that the government has deemed not okay. It's basically the logical continuation of the filter system that we talked about already. Not only do you filter stuff, but the stuff that you filtered and that people might want to use, you replace with something that one of your companies that you control has developed internally. And with China's internet being so successful at curtailing protests and undesirable information, it's no wonder other countries would be willing to follow suit. Except that, fortunately for the open internet, they would have to build massive companies in their own countries that would be able to compete and replace all Google services, all Apple services, Microsoft services, and others. That's the idea of digital sovereignty that, for example, the French government has been touting a lot. And if a country relatively rich like France can't implement that in a reasonable time frame, I don't think a lot of other countries have a shot at it if they don't have the same population and economic power as China or India, for example. And of course, it's not all doom and gloom. The internet is showing signs of healing, at least on certain fronts. The main way is decentralized services. These are emerging again, and they're slowly offering alternatives to the big closed-down networks. Mastodon, for example, is a success story of a federated, decentralized network offering a viable alternative to Twitter, and that can talk to a variety of other services, like PixelFed, WordPress, PeerTube, Castopod, and the like. And even if you combine all of these services, they're still extremely small compared to just Twitter. But Mastodon is still succeeding financially, and is generally a very, very good experience. At least in the case of Mastodon, if you manage to choose a server to create your account on. So you mean to tell me that on top of choosing my internet access provider, my email provider, my phone manufacturer, my OS of choice for my desktop, I now have to choose a server for my social networks? Fuck this, I'm out! Jokes aside, on top of this, various laws are also being passed, forcing big tech companies to relinquish a bit of control over their platforms or their app stores. For example, with Apple being forced in the EU to have iMessage be interoperable and allowing third-party app stores on iOS. So yes, the open internet is slowly dying by a death of 1,000 cuts. More and more we're seeing a lack of openness on the internet and a lack of control over what we can see and what is actually shown to us. Fortunately, the power of big tech companies is starting to be curtailed, at least in some parts of the world, and we're seeing some decentralized alternatives to the major social networks that might be able to finally break that filter bubble that companies want to impose on people. But we still should be very, very concerned over the various countries that try to restrict, to close down their versions of the internet so that they don't really show their citizens everything that they might want to see. And as a first move to get away from big tech companies, why not buy a computer that runs Linux out of the box from today's sponsor? Tuxedo is a company based in Germany, and they ship worldwide a big range of computers that run Linux out of the box, which is undeniably better if you actually want to run Linux than buying a Windows computer and trying to install Linux on it, praying that it's going to be supported. They have a nice big range of devices that should have options for every price point and every need, whether you want a small laptop or a giant workstation or a gaming device in between. They have everything. Most of their devices are openable, repairable, and they're all very customizable, including your own custom keyboard layout on the keyboard of your laptop, or your own logo on the lid of your device, or even no logo at all if you don't like branding. So, if you need a new device and you want to run Linux on it, and you want to support Linux's development, check out the link in the description and buy yourself a device from Tuxedo. They're really good. So, thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, and to write a comment. And if you didn't like the video, well, the dislike button still works, and leave me a comment down below as well, so I know why this video sucked. And if you really enjoy what I'm doing on this channel, there's a super thanks button underneath this YouTube video, there's a PayPal link in the description, and there are links to my Patreon memberships and YouTube memberships. Both get access to an exclusive weekly podcast and the right to vote on the next topics that I'll cover. So, thanks everyone for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!